morning, my name is Josh from CyclonesOZ and welcome to your detailed forecast update for December 17th, 2024. We have a lot to get through today once again, with that rain depression making plenty of heavy falls along the central and the southeastern Queensland coastline. More rainfall is expected over the coming couple of days. That's going to be our top story today, and we're going to get stuck straight into it right now. You can see that rainfall still remaining moderate to heavy at times along parts of the central Queensland coastline. We also had up to 130 millimetres outside of Brisbane last night, so the rainfall, the heavy stuff has been widespread, which has been really good to see. Unfortunately though, we really missed the forecast around the Gladstone and Agnes Water area. They have had some good falls of around 50 millimetres or so, but it's nothing of the sort of crazy rainfall that we were expecting to wake up to this morning. The clouds just really didn't materialise this far down on the Coral Sea, and that's just because those sea temperatures aren't as warm as what they sometimes normally are at this time of the year. They're at 27 or 28 degrees or hovering in that ballpark, but typically this time of the year we're looking at temperatures of around 29 or 30 degrees, and I know that seems like a marginal difference, but that can result in it could result in a tenfold increase in convection. So the cloud activity was pretty disappointing along the central Queensland coastline, and as such the rainfall rates weren't as heavy as expected. Throughout the course of today, not an awful lot is expected until at least this afternoon and evening. There still will be some heavy falls here and there between Rockhampton and Agnes Water from showers over the coming couple of hours, and you can see them here just streaming into the central Queensland coastline. There are some moderate to heavy falls still occurring, but they are very isolated, in fact a lot more isolated than we did expect, and as this rainfall depression moves further inland, it's going to promote a big thunderstorm outbreak later on this afternoon and evening. For southeastern Queensland, that could mean some severe thunderstorms are on the way, and also into the northeast of New South Wales, some severe thunderstorms could be on the way, but we will get to that later on in this forecast update. Widespread showers and storms expected, nothing too heavy, nothing too crazy, but they will be spreading themselves far and wide across the central Queensland coastline for locations between Bowen, including Mackay, down through St Lawrence, and then Ogmore, Rockhampton, Gladstone, Agnes Water, and down towards Bundaberg, and then into the northern parts of the Sunshine Coast, including Hervey Bay, right down to about Brisbane. In fact, there's going to be plenty of showers streaming in from the Coral Sea. Like I said, very few and far between. They're not expected to be anything too heavy or too crazy. There will be some more kind of stronger storms further inland, especially around sort of the Emerald, Jericho, and then out towards Claremont, and then further north, just converging with these low pressure troughs that are all going to mix up to each other. We could be seeing some stronger storms out there with some heavier falls and some locally damaging winds as well. Some good falls also possible around Injune and Taroom, but as always from thunderstorms, the rainfall is going to be very hit and miss and very unpredictable. Charters Towers could also get a couple of good storms later on this afternoon and evening, then the more sort of convective based sea breeze thunderstorms that fire up along the Cape York Peninsula. Again, I will get to far northern Queensland in just a few moments. Now, whilst today is not going to be very impressive in terms of rainfall, it's certainly going to give way to tomorrow's rain band. Now, what's going to be happening is we're going to see that rainfall depression kind of materialise and merge into another tropical low. This is actually a fully blown tropical low expected to emerge off the Cape York Peninsula, somewhere around sort of the Ingham and the Cardwell area, and that's going to give way to some heavier rainfall accumulations from later on tonight. Heavy rain is expected to pipe up for locations between Cardwell right down through Mackay, down to about Ogmore, as this low pressure system, or this very broad low pressure system, wraps itself up tonight and into early tomorrow morning, and moderate falls are expected to the 9 AM tomorrow morning for locations especially around Ayr, Bowen, and then down into the Whitsundays. Nothing too crazy, shouldn't be anything over about 60 or 70 millimetres. Still though, we could get a couple of locations, especially into the more hilly areas outside of Mackay, out towards Gargett and Yalbury. We could be seeing some accumulations there into the triple figures depending on how the rainfall behaves. Again, we will just have to wait and see. And as you play through the forecast on Wednesday, you can see that rainfall really being quite stagnant, quite pesky, and very heavy at times as well. I mean, the accumulations really are going to pile on right through Wednesday morning and into Wednesday afternoon. The low pressure area looks like for the most part it's going to stay inshore across the coast, inland from about Ingham and Cardwell, so it doesn't look like the rainfall is going to be too intense for a big spread of locations. But for locations between Ingham, Townsville and Bowen, they're expecting some heavy rainfall throughout the course of tomorrow, especially into the mid-morning and then into the afternoon hours. Some falls are expected to be quite heavy there. The onshore flow weather behaviour really does pipe up from Wednesday evening as well, and you can see plenty of showers and thunderstorms as well colliding with the Queensland coastline. They pick up once again late Wednesday night into early Thursday morning around the Townsville area, extending inland to Charters Towers, and you can see just all powered by this weak low pressure system, this very weak and very broad low pressure system. Quite frankly, that doesn't look like it's going to be strong enough to provide this amount of rainfall, but inland from Maxwellton and Georgetown, this rainfall here is going to be quite heavy, driven by that low pressure system, and you can see there's going going to be plenty of moisture dragged in and around from the Coral Sea into this system here. So as you can see throughout the course of Thursday, those heavy rainfall showers are expected to tend to rain at times for locations between Cardwell right down the central and the far northern Queensland coastline, stopping at around sort of Ogmore, but they will be at their heaviest between Mackay and Townsville. Bowen looks like it's going to get some pretty good rainfall throughout the course of Thursday as well as Wednesday, and you can see how that rainfall really reaches its maximum late Thursday night into early Wednesday morning when this weak Friday morning rather, when this weak low pressure system emerges off the coastline outside of Townsville. Now, as this low pressure system materialises off the coast of Townsville, the forecast has become just a little bit more uncertain because it is now very dependent on where this system tracks. So any minor kind of shift in where this storm's going to track, that means that there will be major changes in terms of what locations are expecting what rainfall. If we take this forecast at face value and this low pressure system emerges offshore from Ingham at around sort of midnight Thursday night and Friday morning, there's going to be a big drive of rainfall for locations between Townsville right down towards Mackay, and as such you can see on this forecast here, very heavy falls are expected to the 9 a.m. on Friday, and then more heavy rainfall expected throughout the course of Friday. This low pressure system weakens pretty rapidly by the looks of things. In fact, it's kind of a shell of its former self on Saturday, and it really does broaden up as well, extending into a bigger trough across the Coral Sea. Still, there's some heavy falls expected for the Cassowary coast, extending down from Cairns through Innisfail, Tully, and then down towards Cardwell and Townsville, and that rainfall as well extending through to about Bowen as well right throughout the course of Saturday. So even though Friday is expected to be by far the wettest day for the central and the far northern Queensland coastline, there's still going to be moderate falls on Saturday and then into Sunday morning as well. Moderate rainfall expected, with rainfall finally clearing out for most of the locations by Sunday night, and then for the far northern corners of the Cassowary coast probably by Monday afternoon. And then that's it. Looks like we head into a bit of a dry phase, with the next rainfall being around sort of Christmas time, but for the most part, nothing in the way of significant rainfall until at least 2025, when we do have these Coral Sea tropical lows begin to spin up there. This is a very complicated weather situation with this low pressure system, and like I said, it is highly dependent on where this low pressure system tracks. You can see the GFS calling for it to be much further north, and as such, rainfall accumulations along the Queensland coastline by this solution would be much lower. So I would say for the central Queensland coastline, I'm doing my best to give a good forecast here, but take the forecast after Thursday night with a very heavy pinch of salt, because like I said, the rainfall on Friday is very dependent on where this system tracks, because it is going to be concentrated. For the most part though, it looks like what I have just talked about is going to be the most accurate and the most reliable solution. It looks like that's actually going to play out, because the other forecast models are saying that that is going to happen with great congruency, but I'm not guaranteeing it at this time. So if you're really hoping for 200 millimeters to the 9 a.m. on Saturday around Bowen, it is possible, but at this time it doesn't look awfully likely. Like, it is probably about a 60-40% chance of happening versus not happening. So rainfall accumulations are not quite over the next 10 days, but let's do it over the next 7 days, right through today and then in towards Monday. They are going to be quite high. In fact, they're going to be very high in some locations, 400 millimeters or 350 to 400 millimeters for locations between Townsville down to Mackay. Let's start from north and head further south. Like I said yesterday, Cairns on the upper northern end of where this rainfall is going to be at its heaviest. They're still expecting 100 millimeters, and depending on what storms come through there, I reckon 100 millimeters over the next 4 days for Cairns is an entirely plausible forecast. Cairns, the heaviest rainfall will be on both Thursday, Friday and Saturday. Sunday, a couple of morning showers up there, but I don't think Cairns is going to get too much in the way of heavy rainfall over the next 2 days. Parts of the Atherton tablelands and then into the Cassowary coast outside of Innisfail and Tully could get some really good rainfall accumulations as well. There's some of the wettest locations in Australia, so rainfall accumulations there on this forecast are probably a little bit lower than what they're going to expect, but a good number for them would be around 200 millimeters, depending on what showers come through. Cardwell and Ingham about 130 to 150 millimeters apiece. I reckon Ingham might get the most of that rainfall. Townsville as well, about 130 millimeters, but then the rainfall really pipes up once you get from Ayr right down through the Whitsunday. It's about 200 millimeters up towards 250 millimeters expected around Bowen, and then about 250 millimeters as well for parts of Hamilton Island and then other locations along the Whitsundays. Yalborough and Gargett, some of the mountains adjacent to the coastline, around 130 to 150 millimeters. Mackay about 150 to 200 millimeters as well. We're going to really see some good rainfall accumulations for those locations. Again, it is going to be fantastic to see. These are places just in desperate need of this rainfall. Further inland as well, Charters Towers about 120 millimeters as well. Glendon and Moranbah somewhere between sort of 50 and 80 millimeters. Again, from thunderstorms further inland, the rainfall is going to be a little bit more hit and miss, but for the most part, it looks like the closer you get to the coastline, the more likely you are to receive more of a hit on the forecast from the rainfall. And then along into the central Queensland coastline between Ogmore down to Gladstone and Agnes Water. Unfortunately for those locations, yes, there will be a few more storms along the coastline throughout the course of today and into early tomorrow morning, but the real rainfall really has piped down there for the most part. So another 50 millimetres is entirely possible for Agnes Water, but just having a look at the contrast between the actual rain forecast and what's actually happening on the radar right now, it looks like the rainfall is now going to pan out to be a little bit lighter than what we are having. And you can see plenty of showers are going to be streaming throughout the remainder of today, but for the most part it doesn't look like the rainfall there is going to be any more than triple figures over the next couple of days. But still though, they have had a really good run with rainfall, and it makes me and a lot of people very, very happy to see. Funny how such a weak looking system that you could barely pick apart from the zoomed out picture on the Australian satellite. I mean, if we're talking about a rainfall depression, you'd think this one or this one over here would be the more significant one, but it's funny how this system here can cause so many problems, or not so many problems, but still can cause some significant will cause a significant punch to the Queensland weather. Let's go further south now to the southeast of Queensland into the northeast of New South Wales. So although there isn't an awful lot in the way of thunderstorms expected, there will still be some heavier showers further inland, especially out towards Goondiwindi, St George and Thallon later on this afternoon from thunderstorms expected to blow up there. It is going to be a warm day into interior parts of Queensland and parts of New South Wales as well. Temperatures into the high 30s and early 40s expected as well. So they're going to have plenty of kind of evaporation out there, and as such I'm expecting some decent thunderstorms along the border between Wollongara and Inverell first, and then extending out towards Moree, Goondiwindi, and then through St George and Thallon later on into the afternoon and evening. Shouldn't be anything crazy, but certainly the chance of some severe thunderstorms with isolated pockets for heavy rainfall, large hailstones, and damaging winds. Plenty of really good conditions as well, not only just across the northeast of New South Wales, but across the southeast of Queensland as well in general. Instability isn't going to be too great. In fact, the forecast has really backed the instability forecast down. You can see still around that 1500 to 1600 joules per kilogram, and I know that's still an arbitrary number to a lot of people, but that is probably just below what I would expect for a decent thunderstorm outbreak at this time. It doesn't look like anything crazy is going to happen. The humidity as well, it's not going to be too great when these thunderstorms fly up. It's going to be around sort of that 60 to 70%, so nothing too crazy there, but again, the conditions do look decent for these thunderstorms, and although we're not expecting a crazy severe thunderstorm outbreak, there certainly could be a couple of storms with a little bit more punch than normal. So it looks like the northeast of New South Wales and the southeast of Queensland might get something interesting later on this afternoon and evening. And if we switch it to a convective forecast model, you can see some heavier showers are expected out there, so it isn't all kind of smoke haze on this forecast here. But again, I wouldn't expect anything beyond about 7 or 8 p.m, and I wouldn't expect anything crazy either. It looks like some heavy showers also expected into the Scenic Rim and the Gold Coast as well later on tonight into early tomorrow morning, so we will keep a close eye on that, keep close tabs on that throughout the course of Wednesday. Certainly the chance of some heavier showers and thunderstorms as well throughout the course of Wednesday along the Gold Coast and then inland into the mountainous areas adjacent to the Scenic Rim. But for the most part, that severe thunderstorm outbreak that was also expected on Wednesday, although it is still there on the forecast, it is just a little bit too hazy to have a look at it this time. Instability looking okay, humidity values as well looking okay, temperature values not looking too flash into the southeast of Queensland, into the northeast of New South Wales, and the setup overall just doesn't look too grand for potentially severe thunderstorms tomorrow afternoon. So again, both nights it's going to be a real big stretch to see if we get severe thunderstorm activity, but it is still possible for severe thunderstorm hopefuls. Don't lose all hope right now. Rainfall accumulations in general across the eastern coast over the next 7 days in the lead up to Christmas. Nothing crazy is expected. A couple of showers here and there along the New South Wales and the Victorian coastline, but 10-day rainfall accumulations, nothing standing out across eastern Australia or into the southern parts of Australia as a whole. Before we get to those tropics and the tropical lows we're going to have to talk about for the Coral Sea and Western Australia, we'd just like to crack into the temperature forecast. We do have that significant heat wave extending across the interior parts of Australia. Now, conveniently, I'm making this video about an hour and a half later than I normally do, so you can really start to see the temperature observations rise across the interior parts of Australia. 37 at Birdsville right now, getting quite close to 40 out there. It is going to get quite warm there today. Tennant Creek expecting a top into the mid-40s. Parts of Western Australia as well, around Paraburdoo, expecting a top of around 43, 44 as well. Temperatures are going to skyrocket as well into the southwest of Western Australia. Perth actually expecting a top of 37 degrees today. It's going to get quite warm there quite quickly, so make sure you are running the air conditioning, keeping yourself nice and cool, and then warm temperatures as well expected to extend further towards the east throughout the course of of Wednesday, and that's when this heat wave really is expected to develop. You can see on Thursday plenty of 40-degree day pluses across interior parts of Western Australia and then into South Australia and the Northern Territory as well. Those temperatures continuing to rise throughout Friday, especially as you get further towards the north and then into New South Wales along a trough line or a low pressure trough expected to rise throughout Saturday on the 21st. You can see Burke expecting top of 40 and then 40 again for Burke on Sunday, 40 for Lightning Ridge as well, and then on Monday those temperatures expected to extend closer to the coastline in the northeast of New South Wales on the 23rd and the southeast of Queensland could pick up some very warm temperatures indeed on the 23rd. Same deal with Christmas Eve as well. Looks like it's going to be a warm one across the west. You can see temperatures into the mid to high 40s across parts of Western Australia and then into the low to mid 40s across parts of the Goldfields, and then high 40s expected across parts of Western Australia, South Australia, and mid 40s expected for the Northern Territory, interior parts of Queensland, New South Wales, and much of South Australia for Christmas Day. It is going to be a hot one for Adelaide, 37 the top expected there. Melbourne a warm 27. In fact, it could be a little bit warmer than that. Canberra a top of 32, which has been pretty consistent between the last couple of forecasts. Darwin and Brisbane having their pretty much average tops at this time of the year. Perth is actually going to be quite cold on Christmas Day by the looks of things, with a top of 23 powered by some strong sea breezes by the looks of things. I would take this forecast with a pretty heavy pinch of salt, all things considered, for the southwest of Western Australia. I just reckon that it is a little bit too unreliable at this time, but we could still see some a bit of a cool change move through around Christmas time and keep things a little bit cold for the southwest, but I'm not going to get too hopeful for that forecast, and that doesn't look like an exciting Christmas forecast either. In fact, that weather looks really unpleasant, quite frankly. Anyways, in terms of the Australian heatwave situation, it certainly is going to be quite a warm one across interior parts of Australia, so stay cool. They're used to it this time of the year, but again, it is going to be quite warm. Don't do anything silly, and make sure your car has that air conditioning working. Certainly you don't want to break down across interior parts of Western Australia, far away from help at this time of the year, because it can be very dangerous indeed. Now, in terms of those tropical low stuff that we were going to be talking about, so in terms of tropical low stuff, we're going to start off with the Coral Sea. They are expecting something to develop sometime into the New Year's period in line with the Mount Julian Oscillation, the MJO, which is now spinning around, and by the time Christmas rolls around, we'll be well on top of the South Pacific, the Solomon Islands, and then parts of the Coral Sea into the New Year's period. And you can think of that as like a big energy enhancer. It's going to enhance all of the energy across the tropical moisture and the tropical zones just in time for the New Year's period. You can see a tropical low or a weak tropical low spinning up in the Solomon Sea on the 28th and the 29th, and then barreling into the Coral Sea there. And it looks like it might have a good shot of tropical cyclone genesis. Between the other forecast models, there really isn't an awful lot on the show. You can see the GFS not calling for anything at all. In fact, they're calling for squat on the long-term Coral Sea forecast, and the Axis G3 doesn't really go out that far, but you can still see that tropical cyclone activity looks possible by the Axis G3's forecast here. The Axis G3, though, does have a pretty big bias for spinning up tropical cyclones, especially into the 10-day forecast period, so we will take this forecast with a pretty heavy pinch of salt. It doesn't look like this is going to materialize exactly how the Axis G3 is saying, but we will keep a close eye on things nonetheless into the Coral Sea. It's certainly their time to shine in terms of activity. They are long overdue tropical cyclone. Now, it is highly unusual that we will be moving into the New Year's period without a tropical cyclone across the Coral Sea. That is a little bit strange, even though we were expecting not necessarily an active cyclone season, but it certainly wasn't expected to be a dead, quiet one, dead as a doorknob, which is kind of how it has started, especially over east. The west, though, continuing to produce the tropical lows. You can see something spinning up as well, pretty much at the same time that tropical on the Coral Sea was spinning up, and this has a little bit more backing between the other forecast models. You can see the GFS calling for a weak cyclone to develop sometime around the 27th or the 28th, and the Axis G3 as well calling for some rumbles of activity earlier on the forecast around sort of Boxing Day. Again, I can't stress this enough. There's nothing in the way of cyclonic impacts expected for Western Australia in the Christmas or the New Year period at this time. These are just weak tropical lows being spun up by the forecast models that I thought were worthwhile taking a look offshore from Western Australia and Queensland. This is nothing serious that we're talking about in terms of tropical cyclone impacts. It's certainly something we will keep a very close eye on, especially at the CyclonesOZ channel, and also I imagine the news agencies are going to get themselves over this pretty quickly, like a chip to a seagull, like a seagull to a chip. I had it right the first time. But yes, certainly something that we will keep in the back of our heads, especially for Western Australia and Queensland. Every spin up is worth taking a look at this time of the year, because we are in cyclone season, and you never know what both the Coral Sea and the Indian Ocean is ready to throw at Australia. They can throw some absolute monsters, and thankfully we haven't seen one over the past couple of months, but but it certainly is on the cards. We're now moving into our busiest months of the cyclone season, and we will need to keep very vigilant across parts of Queensland and Western Australia. Anyways, that is all that I have time for this morning. I do want to thank you very much for watching the video to this point, and also give me the feedback if you saw yesterday's forecast update as well in the evening. I'm planning on doing twice daily forecast updates when there's something significant happening, especially over Queensland. I mean, that's where all of the people are watching, so we will keep a very close eye on Queensland and keep very close tabs on the weather. But if you did enjoy that little kind of secondary update where I revamped the forecast in the afternoon and evening, I could short and sweet as well, I believe, then please do let me know in the comment section down below. And of course, if you've got any feedback, then please do let me know as well. But that is all for me today. A special shout out to the channel sponsors. The names are on screen right now. Again, I could not run the show without them, and their support is much appreciated. But that is all for me today, and I will catch you all in the next storm. Goodbye.